really well. It is February 1st as I'm filming this, and I'm sitting down to tell you about the books that I read in January. This might be a two-parter. I'll just see how this goes. A few books I've done individual reviews for already, so I won't have to take up as much time talking about those. The year started off really beautifully. With Just Ella by Annette K. Larsen. I gave it 5 stars. It was my first completed book of the year, so that felt like a really good omen for how the reading year will go. Even though then the rest of the month I kind of spent just very stressed out and with this sense of immense urgency to read all of the things. You know, how am I going to get to all of the things? And I have all these different kinds of books that I'm in the mood for. So we'll see how the reading year goes. It started off great, though, with Just Ella. I thought the reason I was originally intrigued is I thought it was a Cinderella retelling because of Ella in the title. It is not a Cinderella retelling. It is a sweet romance in a castle setting, which is so fun. I thought maybe then it was going to be fairy tale with magic. It wasn't. It was just a really delightful, sweet romance. Ella is a princess, and she's not sure kind of what her role in the world will be when she is older. She feels very different from her sisters, kind of an odd one out, and ends up finding love, but it's not necessarily the conventional choice that her parents would want for her. This had such a lovely, gentle slice of life feel to it. I loved getting to do daily life with Ella, and she really has a wonderful, beautiful character arc. As the story continues on, she kind of finds the inner strength that she didn't know that she had. There were a few stressful elements that I was wondering, like, oh, where, how far is this going to go? And everything ended up being okay in the end. It has a very happy, sweet ending, and it was just, really, really delightful. So this was the first in the Books of Dorothea series, my first book by Annette K. Larsen, and it definitely won't be my last. So I'm very excited to continue on in that series. And she has several other books, and she has some fairy tales reimagined. And so there's one that's Peter Pan and one that's Alice in Wonderland, which doesn't appeal to me as much. But I really liked her writing. So it's always fun to find new to me authors. A few years ago, when I first started on BookTube, kind of the new authors that were publishing books were all literary fiction authors. And that's what BookTube was talking about if they weren't talking about YA fiction. And I tried so much literary fiction and couldn't stand it. And periodically I'll try again, ones that are buzzed about on BookTube. And I just don't talk about them on here because I don't like them. So then finally I found people talking about new genre fiction that was coming out, fairy tale retellings and sweet romance. And that has been so much fun finding new authors to love. Okay, then the next one we read after Christmas. It is The Last Holiday Concert by Andrew Clements. And this was so fun to read after Christmas. We had only read it after Christmas because our hold hadn't come in prior to that, but then it was nice to have something festive afterwards. And this is exactly what I was hoping it would be, which is full of humor and funny narration. And then at the end, it has a real heartfelt feel to it. So I really loved that about it. And it's about this teacher who unfortunately is being let go because they're cutting the music program at his school. And so he's very heartbroken about this. He feels just very unappreciated, and he just he just feels like he isn't sure if he's made an impact at all. And then this holiday concert comes along, and there is conflict, and he even says, like, you all can do the concert on your own to his students. He just doesn't feel appreciated by them. And then they end up really banding together and making this amazing concert. And I was crying at the end. It's just exactly what I was hoping it would be. So really, really a wonderful read. And then I read The Netherworld by George Gissing, and I'm trying to get to 25 Victorian books read this year. And so I'm doing a little review, kind of my experience reading that book, and I will link my thoughts on The Netherworld down below. It was something else. That's all I have to say. And the next book that I read was 84 Charing Cross Road. This was a reread. It is such a little gem that packs a punch, and it feels like a love letter to anyone who has bonded over a common interest. And I love being a part of this community because everyone here gets it, being so obsessed with books because they make life wonderful and beautiful, and this book feels like such a tribute to that. So it's a beautiful book, And I followed it up with the movie, and the movie was exactly what I was hoping it would be. So many adaptations that come out now are like, okay, here's the book. That's great. Now what can we do to, hold everyone's short attention and make it shiny and new and totally revamp it. That's, that's the plague of book adaptations now. And it was exactly what I was hoping it would be. It was the most calming film I think I've ever seen. And then the next book that I read was All Things Wise and Wonderful. And these are, the first three are chunkers. So I have actually already begun The Lord God Made Them All. I was really sad that I wasn't kind of in the mood to binge this series all summer, but now it's really lovely to pick back up with it. What I really loved is that it's two books originally, Vets Might Fly and Vet in a Spin. And they're about James's time in the RAF. And so he could have just done the RAF, but what he does is he straddles between that, present day timeline and then more anecdotes from the past. And it seems like he had just so many funny stories to tell. I can't believe just funny story after funny story. But at this point when, Alf White was his name, was writing these, he had had decades of veterinary experience. So I guess you do accumulate many funny anecdotes. I think the funniest story to me in all of these that I've read so far, because I've never read The Lord God Made Them All or Every Living Thing, so we'll see if it gets topped, but there is this really, really cranky cat named Oscar, and Tristan has to help get Oscar to the veterinary practice, and he sits with Oscar in the back of the car, and they have this battle, and the way that James Herriot writes it is so funny. Also, he becomes a dad in this one, so I'm really excited now in Every Living Thing to hear more about his children. I think although he still has one kid so far. And it's just, I cannot recommend this series enough. And I think some people are not sure if they'll be interested because they're not a huge animal person. I myself, just being totally honest, I'm not a huge animal person either. And it's the way that they are written. And obviously, even if I'm not a huge animal person, it's still a really wonderful thing to see great care being taken to living creatures. So yes, I really love these. And then the next one that I read was Chantry House by Charlotte Mary Yonge, a real highlight of the month for me. I'm so excited to continue to read much more by Charlotte Mary Yonge, and I will link my video review of that down below. And then my Instagram books, so some of them, let's see, I have to look on the list. So The Homemaker by Dorothy Canfield Fisher. Then Winter Cottage by Carol Ryrie Brink. So I have a video coming out soon talking about my thoughts on these Instagram books, or maybe that will have come out first. I hadn't decided which one to put up first. So I will let you know, the thoughts in there on Winter Cottage and The Homemaker, and then the other books that were in that Instagram list. Okay, I feel I'm a bit disorganized. Then the next one was In the Presence of the Enemy by Elizabeth George. This is, I think, the 7th or 8th Inspector Lynley, and it was such an emotional ride. I find these books so intense, so I never want to read a bunch in a row, but it was amazing. It is always an experience to read these. The reason why it was an emotional ride especially was because there is a politician, and as a way to blackmail her, someone kidnaps her child. And so you don't know what's going to happen to them. And so just reading it as a mother, I had so many feelings. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart, Elizabeth George's books, but they never feel graphic. It always feels, it feels like something that could happen and that you would see in the news. So yeah, her books are so powerful, and this one was no less powerful. Then the next book was Then There Were Five by Elizabeth Enright. This was an audiobook that I did with the boys, and we just ate this up. We love this series. It's part of the Melendi family quartet. And I have to say, I have discovered that I have an affinity for kind of lovable curmudgeons in books. And so Squire Hamley in Wives and Daughters, and then now Cuffy, who is the housemaid in the Melendi family quartet. She is so much more than a housemaid. She is basically what do I want to say? Not foster mother, but, a substitute mother. I'm not sure the term that I'm looking for. A mother figure to them. Their mother passed away when they were all very little. And I just love the tough love that she gives. She's gruff around the edges, but she loves them all to pieces. And just following the adventures of them, this was a very summertime book. So I'm curious what season the last one will be in the quartet. And then the next one that I read was Kenny and the Dragon by Tony DiTerlizzi. Just purely, I had not tried his books. He has also written the Spiderwick Chronicles, and purely based off the movie trailer, that made me decide I wouldn't like his writing, which is such a silly thing to do. So now I'm definitely going to be investigating the Spiderwick Chronicles. I'm very excited to read more by him. And I have the next book, Kenny and the Book of Beasts, checked out, and it is I have the physical book, and then the audiobook is narrated by Alan Cumming, which I'm very excited about. But the Kenny and the Dragon is filled with beautiful illustrations, so I loved that. So I think I will maybe hold the physical book in front of me and, follow it and look at the illustrations, because it was just so lovely to have Tony DiTerlizzi's amazing art. This is kind of like The Wind in the Willows with magic. Or even, for those of you who are kind of my age bracket, the Franklin cartoon show, or it was a little bit younger than me, but the Franklin cartoon show, or also the Little Critter books, those with magic, and something about that is incredibly charming to me. I ate it right up, and there is a new dragon who has arrived in town, and Kenny becomes friends with him, but all of the townspeople do not trust this dragon, and they don't understand kind of what a cosmopolitan and gentle dragon he is. So he just wants to learn about culture and art, and it's so charming. So very excited to read Kenny and the Book of Beasts, and then try out the Spiderwick Chronicles finally. Then the next one that I read was part of the Miss Read, Follow Us to Fairacre read-along that I host with Chelsea at Voyage of a Time Wanderer, Rainy at Rainy Day Reads, and Angie at Literary Labors. And this one is Fairacre Festival, and it was just a little novella. The only flaw that it had for me was the length. It was just a little too short. There's a storm in the very beginning that damages the church roof, and so they need to figure out a way to raise funds, and they end up having a week-long festival to try to raise funds to fix the church roof. I just adore being in this world, and when I finish the Fairacre series, I will most definitely be reading the Thrush Green series. I love the writing of Miss Read. It's so wonderful to finally have fallen in love with her writing. I am excited that this month we definitely have a longer one, which is Emily Davis. And I definitely want kind of just more pages to sink into. So yes, and our live show is on February 17th, Friday, February 17th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we were more on the ball with having our live show date organized. And then the next one that I read, it was a reread, and that is Diary of a Nobody. I read this for my Kindred Spirits book club, and this was fun. I didn't enjoy it quite as much the second time around. I think because I had built it up in my mind to bigger of a book than it is. It's one of those, it's not this amazing, literary masterpiece. It's just a fun, diverting book. And that's what I should have treated it as, but I kind of had built it up in my mind. So I definitely did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. There are so many laugh out loud moments, and it was fun to discuss with everyone, but I did a little bit into it. I thought, you know what? This isn't the best book for a book discussion. Kind of, you want to have deeper themes for book discussions. And so it was fun, and there was a really big attendance because it was the beginning of the year. But now I am excited. The other books definitely all lend themselves more to discussing. And The Pursuit of Love has so many, it's a lot to unpack in that one. So very excited to continue on with the Kindred Spirits Club in the new year. And then the next one that I read was Paddington Goes to Town by Michael Bond. I have gone on and on about this series, and I can't get enough of it. This one was really funny in that Paddington does some hospital visits, and not everything goes well because of that. You know, he just has such a tendency for disasters. Paddington does. Okay, and then the next one was White Boots by Noel Streatfeild. I did enjoy this one. However, I don't know how else to phrase this. there was too much about ice skating in this, which sounds like a silly thing to say about the original title of this was Skating Shoes. So I think it's one of those, if ice skating is your hobby, this is going to be your dream book. It's beautifully written. I loved the characters of Lala and Herriot, and kind of the Prince and the Pauper sort of trope where Lala has been raised in with, being fed with a silver spoon, and her aunt has always wanted her to be an ice skater. Her aunt is her legal guardian. And then she meets Herriot, and Herriot is definitely from a more working class background. And when she becomes ill, her doctor says, why doesn't she do ice skating to strengthen her, after she's recovering? So I am a little bit worried that the rest of the Shoes books, they might be a little too much about their title. I did receive dancing shoes from my friend Jessica, so I'm hoping that maybe that one, I won't feel quite the same way about the hobby in that. There was a bit about gardening, and even though I don't really garden myself, I always enjoy hearing about it. So I'll just see. I just know I gave The Bell Family by Noel Streatfeild 5 stars easily. There are a couple that are not Shoes books. There's Thursday's Child and stuff. So I definitely want to investigate more by Noel Streatfeild because her writing is beautiful. Just the plot, maybe I wasn't quite as invested in. Then I read Cress by Marissa Meyer. This was a reread. I have to say, these are really breakneck speed with all of the action that happens in them. So I definitely need kind of a breather before I pick up with Winter. But this book, it really held up to my reread. The romance between Cress and Thorne they are my favorite couple. I love kind of the more like experienced, jaded guy and the bright, sunshiny, naive girl. That combo to me, I just think is so endearing, and she really melts his heart. So this is the Rapunzel retelling, and I love how Marissa Meyer transforms it into a sci-fi fantasy where she's stuck in this satellite on her own for 7 years, I think it is. And yeah, it's just such a fun series. So I really like her writing. And adult fantasy, I've tried a couple since The Wheel of Time, and I just get very overwhelmed by the world building. So I think I need to keep investigating more YA fantasy, because it's just the amount of world building that I like. And I know that Marissa Meyer also has a series called Renegades that I would like to try. So very much enjoying my reread of the Lunar Chronicles. And then I never read, Following Winter is a book called Stars Above, which is a short story collection, and I would love to read that. And then one that was just a real delight was Leroy Ninker Saddles Up. Peter read this aloud to me, and we had so much fun with this. Kate DiCamillo, I adore her writing, and she has it's sort of picture book early chapter book series called Mercy Watson about a pig. And these are lengthier, and it's from the same world. So I think maybe we'll meet Mercy Watson again in these, but it's Tales from Decaloo Drive. And Leroy Ninker has always wanted to be a cowboy, and he finds this horse named Maybelline, and they become great friends. And Chris Van Dusen, I love his illustrations. They are so, they just jump right off the page. Yes. So this was just such a fun little treat. And I think there are maybe 7 in the series. Excited to continue on with that. And then lastly, you will see a review coming from me, my 3rd Victorian novel of the year, or Victorian book, because this is not a novel, The Journals of George Eliot. And very excited to tell you about this, my thoughts on it, and continue with my project, and hopefully get to 25 by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. We'll see. I think that is everything that I had to talk to you about. And I hope that you enjoyed hearing about the books that I read in the month of January. I hope that you all had a great January, and that please let me know your favorite book that you read in January. I will be back for another video very soon, and I hope you all have a marvelous day. Bye.